Welcome back to Connected with Eva, the space where we dive deep into what it really means to grow, heal, and live intentionally. Today we have someone truly special joining us, Lauren Ray, the brilliant mind and heart behind Never Just Fine. Lauren's work is all about reminding us we were never meant to simply settle for fine. She helps people reconnect with their purpose, embrace their worth, and design lives that feel as good as they look. Lauren's perspective will open your mind to the kind of faith, imagination, and self-belief that turns ordinary moments into extraordinary transformations. So, take a breath, tune in, and let's get connected. Being delusional has been popping up recently because it makes the whole idea in our law of attraction, visualizing, manifestation, it makes it really accessible. Why should we allow a little bit of healthy delusion in our lives?
Well, I love this question. I'm really glad that you phrased it the way that you did. Like you phrased it healthy delusion, because there is an unhealthy delusion. And I think, a lot of people may then suddenly listen to this and go, well, how will I know if it's healthy? Like, if you're self-aware enough, you can have an awareness. I always say have one foot grounded in reality and in gratitude of what you already have, and one foot of what could be. And for me, that's the healthy delusion. It's like, yes, like really know exactly where you are and what your reality actually is, with one foot in the possibilities. And for me, delusional thing is more about programming your brain to be comfortable and expect safety in things that are currently yet not known, because our brains are wired for safety and to keep us in our what we call comfort zones, but I think it's more the familiar zone, because just because it's our familiar zone does not mean it's comfortable by any means, but it's wired to keep us in what it already knows. And so that whole delusional aspect of it is allowing yourself to believe that beyond what your current existence is possible. And I think what I love about this is that a healthy delusional mindset is much more possible now because we have access to people that are outside of our bubbles. Even 15 years ago, you only really were exposed to the people that you were exposed to, that like your family exposed you to. And so the idea that you could have a different type of lifestyle, that you could live in a different particular way, that you could earn more money than your parents earn, you could make very different choices, like to have kids, not have kids. Every possible choice is now available. And I think the delusional aspect is, for me, is that allowing yourself to believe that what life could be more than what you already ever experienced. And that's kind of what it is, without it being the unhealthy form where you just have no touch on reality whatsoever. And, you're expecting yourself to become a millionaire in 24 hours for like no reason. There's like no action's been taken. Oh, but if I think I believe that I'm delusional. I was like, no. 1 foot in reality, 1 foot in healthy delusion.
So there's so many things to unpack there. First of all, the safety aspect. If you want something, and if you dream of something, and if you envision something for yourself, the moment you're either really close to getting it or actually getting it, how do you feel? Do you feel safe or do you feel unsafe? And that realization really shocked me, because I had a few experiences where I felt extremely anxious and I was focusing on all the tiny little maybe negative details that I dig to find. It was something I really wanted, but it was so unfamiliar to me thus far. So my whole nervous system was like, you don't feel safe. So let's talk about, how do you get safe with what you want, with achievement, with progress?
That feeling of scare, like anxiety, stress, if you really think about what it feels like to be scared and stressed and anxious, sometimes it kind of is the same as when you're excited. I've done a lot of things where I am both equally excited and nervous, and I can't differentiate between the two in the moment. And it depends on what I'm focusing on is what I then label that feeling as. So that's one thing. It's also recognizing, are we labeling the feeling correctly always? Ultimately, our bodies and our minds are hardwired for what is familiar. Let's say you want to move abroad and you've never lived abroad before. As you say, you can imagine it and you get nervous. Like, what if I don't know anybody there? What if it's really difficult? All of the what ifs, kind of the digging and the fear can come up because it's so out of your territory. One way you can start to support yourself through that is, I always like to combine it with what I think is conscious coaching and somatic sort of nervous system support, where consciously, carefully and kind of kindly challenge those other thoughts that come up. Well, I have a contingency plan, really provide it with some logic, some grounding, some whatever you need to kind of create safety around the actual reality of what you're creating. some people have a lot of fear about taxes. So like, we'll go and speak to an accountant. Like there are some things that you can do to create evidence and support in that sense. But from a nervous system perspective, the more you visualize and practice imagining yourself in that situation, feeling safe and feeling calm, even if that anxious comes up, it's like, I'm still safe. It really is sometimes as simple as the visualization of what you're trying to step into. And in that visualization, telling yourself that you're safe, breathing into it, allowing your nervous system to be okay with experiencing this feeling. I don't have to tell you, but like most people numb their emotions so much. I mean, it's like binging eating and, drinking or like just scrolling because we can't sit with the emotions. And for me, the biggest superpower that anybody can have is to learn to get comfortable in discomfort, and just learning to feel that you're still safe, even if you feel uncomfortable.
I love that so much. And it's something I actually talk about quite a lot because, again, my own personal experience in my early 20s, I would not be able to sit by myself, with myself, my thoughts, or even my reality that was brought upon by my thoughts was something I didn't like. So any alone time when my thoughts would come to the surface was so overwhelming. I would just feel sorry for myself, all lonely, all of these things. So recently, I started really enjoying being by myself because that's the thing. When you feel safe within yourself, you're comfortable going out and risking things, going out and experiencing new things, going out and being a little bit uncomfortable, like you said.
Even in the process of like learning this skill of being comfortable in discomfort, like I don't feel like anybody should expect themselves to even feel comfortable within themselves immediately, but it's like, you're okay. I sometimes say to people, if this is such new territory, like do this kind of practice in a really literal, safe way. Like obviously don't do anything crazy that puts you in physical danger and do things on your own, but like go to the cinema on your own, go and have lunch on your own without being on your phone the whole time and just sit in whatever thoughts, discomfort comes up, whatever your version of that. Everyone's going to have their own version because some people are like, I go to the cinema on my own all the time. Okay, fine. Find something that's a bit more a different stretch for you, but find safe ways that stretch you a little bit, that put you in that feeling of discomfort. Like go to an improv class, go to a dance class. Like someone invited me recently to go to an improv class and I could feel my whole body feeling so uncomfortable at the thought. And I thought, well, now I have to do it because there's something in that is so uncomfortable, the thought of doing that I really want to allow myself. That's obviously a stretch zone for me because I do a lot of things on my own and I have no problem being on my own and doing things on my own because I'm so used to it now. So when I find myself going, oh, no, I go, oh, that's a stretch for me. Okay, well, let me stretch my capacity. And it's safe to do it. And it's not that I have to expect myself to feel comfortable doing an improv class. But what I can expect myself is to remind myself I'm safe because I will literally be safe. And that's where you start to stretch that capacity.
I was just thinking, what am I still uncomfortable doing by myself? And the thought that popped up was going to bars by myself. I only go out to bars or places like that with friends. I never even would consider the possibility of going by myself.
Well, now you have to go to like a nice wine bar this weekend. It's it's a weekend coming up. You got to go for a nice wine bar and just sit and have a glass of wine on your own.
You think sometimes you're safe doing things because also there's progress. You can actually see progress, but you don't think of the things that you still haven't experienced because growth it doesn't stop. So you have to keep pushing your boundaries of comfort in that kind of way that is going to help you grow.
Exactly. And I think it's also recognizing that you'll be comfortable and stretched in one area. And then as like this examples we've just given, but then we'll come up against a different part of ourselves, a different aspect, a different experience that stretches us. And so many people come up to me, or not come up to me, but like reach out to me about my coaching to ask about like, I want to be more confident in this particular area, but they kind of phrase it like they're not confident at all in life. They're like, I'm not a confident person. And I'm like, well, that's not true. Because there will be things that you are confident in, even if it's just confident that you can get dressed in the morning. Like if you want to go that basic, we can. But there will be things that you have confidence in. It's just that what you're telling me is that you don't have confidence in this particular thing that you want to do, whether it's confidence speaking on stage, confidence starting a business. This is just a new avenue, but we can apply the learnings of where you have been confident somewhere else or where you've become comfortable there. Like everything was once new and scary. And there are so many things now that we take for granted. Like even just you and I having a conversation. We just met 13 minutes ago. and we're already chatting. This for me would have been terrifying not that long ago. And so now it's a comfortable thing. And so, yeah, now I have to go to an improv class. I'm terrified.
Two things here. First of all, imposter syndrome. Second of all, the opinion we have of how others see us. Because I feel like there's a little bit of a mix between them as well. Imposter syndrome is kind of related also how we assume others see us. We might actually say, I'm not a confident person, but that at work, you're the one who is managing a team, or people are always reaching out to you because they know you're confident in that area. I feel like imposter syndrome is one of the reasons that many people don't start something they want to do, because they're like, I'm not good enough, or I'm not accomplished enough. I don't have experience in this field, so I'm not going to start because there are people who would do it better. They do it better now. They're so much better. There's that imposter syndrome in relation to comparison. And I feel like it's really detrimental to our growth, because we just don't grow if we don't do things.
Exactly. And I have so many mixed feelings about imposter syndrome. Like, I kind of contradict myself sometimes, even when I talk about it. But I don't think imposter syndrome is always necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes I have clients who come to me and say they have imposter syndrome. You know, it's that feeling of, what am I going to get find out? Because you've never done this before. And actually, there is that signal to you that's, in some cases, it's like correct that you feel that, because actually it's something so new that actually they're going to feel that feeling of like, oh my God, I shouldn't belong here, because you've never been in this room before. And it's going to take you a while to feel comfortable, but we've misinterpreted it as a problem. If you feel imposter syndrome, kind of take that as a green flag that you are growing and stretching, because nobody feels imposter syndrome just sitting at home on the couch doing nothing. Sometimes, and I'm not saying you should seek it out, but like sometimes it's just a signal that you are stretching, that you are putting yourselves in bigger rooms. You are stepping up in whatever particular arena that is. The other thing I find really interesting is that over the last 5 years that I've been doing this work, I've noticed that what happens often with imposter syndrome, it's not only about how we see ourselves, but it's the misinterpretation or the misunderstanding of what a particular age or particular job or a particular thing should feel like. Like the number of clients that have come to me and said, you know, I just don't feel like a grown-up, like what a 40-year-old CEO should feel like, or I don't feel like I'm a successful, I don't feel like a successful business owner. I'm like, what does a 40-year-old CEO feel like? It's the projection and the misunderstanding of what we are thinking we should feel. But that's totally wrong. You know, it's normally wildly incorrect. And we've projected this magical, mystical version of what it should feel like when you hit 40, what should feel like when you finally get a management job. But it's total nonsense. And so it's also a combination of our perception and our opinions about ourselves, and also a total misunderstanding about what life should feel like. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, nobody feels like that. That's crazy. I still feel like I'm like in my 20s and I am in my late 30s. I'm not going to then say I have imposter syndrome about being 30 in my late 30s. I'm going to say I have a wildly misrepresented understanding of what 38 should feel like.
We want to be somewhere in comparison to someone who's way ahead in their journey. They started, we didn't see their start. Nobody saw their start, because when they were starting, they weren't visible. When someone starts a project, a career, a podcast, or coaching, whatever it is, they might compare themselves to someone who's years into that journey. I was like, no, but I'm not there. So obviously, I'm not doing it properly. I'm not doing it like this. I'm not doing it like da 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 da. So there are all these expectations based off comparison,
which is mostly comparing ourselves to total nonsense or misleading information, or, as you say, like comparing your day one to someone's day 1,000. It's just like most of the time we are binding ourselves and tying ourselves down with rope that has no, I mean, this is a terrible analogy, but like it has no basis on anything. It's just made up stuff, It's sort of this illusion that we've tied ourselves in and got ourselves all tangled for nothing a lot of the time. And that's what I find so fascinating about the human psyche. Going back to delusional, I mean, it's kind of wild how delusional we can be about what life should look and feel like.
We tend to get delusional about the negative things. So then why can't we get delusional about the positive things?
I mean, exactly. People spend, what's that quote? It's like 99% of the things you worry will ever happen will never happen. It's like, or something, there are plenty of things I've worried about, none of which have ever happened. But it's like, we are so skilled and highly skilled at being insanely delusional about all the worst case possibilities and all the most horrific things could happen to us. And we pretend we know what people are thinking. We're that delusional that we believe that we can project, oh, Susan just looked at me, she's thinking this. You don't know what Susan's thinking. Your belief that you can read minds is delusional. So we do have the capacity to make things up. And yet we don't channel that energy and that skill that we have as human beings into positive things. Like, I actually really almost have fun with this sometimes. I'm a musician as well as a coach. And there are times where I'm on stage, and luckily a lot of the time you can't see people's faces. But occasionally the lighting on the stage and the audience is just so that you can see like maybe the first couple of rows. And so much about being a performer is just not pretending that you know what anybody's thinking. And because your mind does go, oh, that person yawned, or that person looks very deadpan. And it's much easier for our brains to go, that person's bored, that person hates me. So I have fun with it. And I'm like, that person is the person yawning, that person's an avid music goer. They've gone to 3 shows in a row and it's nothing to do with me. Like, I'm like, they just love music so much and they're so excited. The person who's deadpan, they're just so connected with the music. Their face hasn't even, I just make up totally more positive things as a way to play with that strength that we have, because otherwise I'm, not using my powers for good.
When you go out socially or when you're around people, whether it's work, you're interacting with people. For example, even this week, I had a job where someone's sense of humor was quite, I guess, a little bit sarcastic in a way. Does he not like me? And actually, this could literally just be this person's personality. We, as human beings, love to be the center of the universe. We always think whether somebody's mad at us, somebody, is misinterpreting what we're saying and, never wants to see again. We get quite dramatic about these things. Someone could actually be having a bad day and not react to us positively. And that, again, has nothing to do with this.
We do have a tendency to think that we're far more impactful than we normally are. Like, it's kind of egotistical to think that we have that much power, that our very presence could be that impactful on someone. But I also think sometimes that person doesn't like me. And that is also fine. This is the piece I've got to in my life where I'm like, most of the time I will never know. I will just never know. And therefore it's much better for my mental well-being if I assume a positive. I assume they're having a bad day. I assume it's not having something to do with me. I assume whatever. I'm just misinterpreting it. And on the very rare occasion, I don't know, rare, maybe it's more often than I think, but on the occasion that someone genuinely doesn't like me, okay, I don't like everybody that I meet. Like, why would I expect everyone in the world for me to be their cup of tea? And so I've also found peace with the fact that although I will probably never know, I also have to be okay with the fact that sometimes that belief, that interpretation is correct. And can I be okay with that? Probably. There are plenty of people that I meet that I'm not like super keen on, but that doesn't mean they're a terrible or bad person most of the time. It just means that me and them aren't a good fit. So I kind of move on. But yeah, it's sort of managing your thoughts and recognizing where you're just making stuff up. And if you're going to make stuff up, at least make it positive, because it's so much easier and so much nicer to go through life. Again, it's delusional thing. It's just pretending everything's fine until told otherwise. They can tell me they don't like me. It's fine. And actually, I won't tell you who, because they're somewhat famous. But somebody I met a while ago, I just knew they didn't like me. And a few people said, I think you're being a bit overly sensitive. And I really don't think I am. And I'm not normally someone who's really adamant. I was like, this person does not like me. And I would kind of made my peace with it, because I was like, well, there's nothing I can do. Whatever. Like, I have no idea why. I mean, I could see the projections onto me, but I was like, well, this person doesn't like me. My life is not going to be ruined as a result. And then about 5 years later, I mentioned this to somebody who knew this person. And they said, oh yeah, no, she didn't like you at all. So I was like, wonderful. I was right. But also I was fine and I'm okay. I survived. I'm safe. So I can now be comfortable knowing that that may happen again. I'll be okay. I survived. I'm safe. So then I expand my capacity for life, ultimately.
It's like such a small thing when you think about it, because we have so many interactions with people on a daily basis. And if we actually spend our lives worrying about every single interaction, that's such a waste of energy, of precious energy that can go towards being delusional and creating a life we want. We can't do that. We can't. Even today, how many people did I cross paths with? There was Jem, there was, I met a friend. Even while you're walking, you're, crossing paths with people. So you might be like, oh, they looked at me funny.
This morning, I decided to go for a little bit of a walk around the park near where I live. And I started just randomly doing like long lunges. I don't know why. I was like, I just feel like I need to like move my body a different way. And this man started like yelling at me, kind of motivational, but like making fun of the fact that I was working out. And it was also a bit like inappropriate. Obviously like, I'm like, oh, this is a weird interaction, but also I have my headphones in, so I can just pretend I don't hear him. And that's the magic of headphones. It's like, I can just move on with my life. And literally the headphones is a very literal example of that. We can just not have it go into our brains. We can choose for it to not impact us. We can choose to not make it mean anything about us. Like that was fully about that person's mental state. But we can do the same thing, with our imaginary headphones. We can block it out. We can decide what we consume. We can decide what we are taking in, and we can decide what we can just blinkers.
It's really important that you're saying it, because we have so much intake of information on a daily basis, so much. And if we don't decide, our brain decides for us, and our brain decides based off what we've known thus far, who we are as a person based off everything that's happened before. So if we don't change something, if we don't pick the information that's decided for us, and it's not always the information that will be useful to us.
Exactly. I remember when I started my coaching business, someone knew somebody who'd been a coach for years, and they said, oh, I should, connect you with this person. They've been a coach for like 20, 30 years. I'll give you some advice. And her advice to me was, don't expect it to be a full-time income, because most coaches only make like, 20 grand. And she's been doing it for 20, 30 years, but always as a part-time thing. And I remember literally moving the phone away from my head. Like it was such a physical response, because I just finished my training in neurolinguistic programming, in hypnosis. I'd done all my training about the subconscious mind, and I physically moved the phone away from my head. And I was like, that's not for me. And even just the act of saying that is me defiantly kind of protecting myself. Like the guy in Lord of the Rings who's like, none shall pass. Like it's that energy. It's like, this is not for me. This will not come into my subconscious mind. But it was very physical, just moving my phone away from my head for that second to make that statement. And we can do that all the time with different things if we are paying attention and we are aware of how much everything is impacting us without our realization.
Talking about that, what would be some beginner steps to get to that level of awareness and that level of power in action?
Good question. I always feel like, because there's so many areas of our life that we could do this with, like I think it's much easier for someone just to pick an area of their life and start to pay attention in that area. Because otherwise it could be like, I'm trying to do all of this and you can do it. I just think that if you're completely new to this, I would just say pick one area of your life. Maybe it's work. Just start paying attention to the thoughts that you're having, the things you're saying about yourself, about, if you're going around saying, oh, no one's buying anymore, like the economy is messed up, like no one's on social, if you're saying all these things, like it's creating a reality and a perspective that is not helpful. If you're saying, oh, I can never do, it's just like really be paying attention to your thoughts, your reactions, your feelings, and just in that particular area of your life, just become like mildly obsessed with yourself to really understand, how am I engaging and how am I co-creating the world that I'm in this particular area of my life? And then once you've kind of got to grips with that, start writing them down and just sort of really looking at them. And then there are so many things you can do to kind of rewrite them. You can challenge them with love. You can explore where they're from. To be honest, a lot of them end up coming back to this feeling of I'm not enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, whatever. That often is such a deeply rooted belief that it does take a little bit more of subconscious, deeper work to shift, because as you were saying, we're exposed to so much. But without getting too political about this, the entire, economy relies on people not feeling good enough. And so we are, in a way, fighting against an entire ecosystem that is trying to convince you you're not good enough. And so the idea that you could just write a positive affirmation, I am enough, and that would be sufficient, is kind of unfair, because it's you against an entire world ecosystem, the entire economy, every single billboard, every single subliminal message that we've received since we were kids. Because if we do feel good enough, we stop buying as much things, we do a little bit less cosmetic surgery, we aren't numbing ourselves with consumer products. So it's not in the best interest of most companies that we do feel good enough. So I always say to people, there are some things that are really easy just to shift. You just go, oh, that's insane. Why do I think that? And it's really easy. But some of the deeper stuff, it does take a little bit more time, or combining it with deeper subconscious work like hypnosis, EFT, all those kind of things, because you are going up against an entire society telling you otherwise.
I remember at school, for example, because I grew up in Bulgaria and our school was very traditional in that sense, where only academic knowledge is intelligence. If you're not excelling in that academic field, you're stupid, basically. You suck all the information in at that age. So if it's that kind of information, this is going to be your thought process, your belief system.
I mean, it is well. I mean, I went through the same sort of schooling system, exactly the same, like word for word, note for note. The boxing thing is interesting because if you are creative, you're kind of normally then boxed in as you are creative, but you're not logical or you're not technical, you're not smart. There's kind of those kind of boxes. And I was always sort of put in the box of you're creative, but I'm not good at maths. I'm not good at science. I'm not good at tech. But actually, I got the same grade at every single lesson. So for me, the data was telling me that I was capable of multiple different things. The messaging I was receiving is you are creative and you're not these other things. And I look back on my life and I think that really shaped how I didn't go for certain things. Like I didn't start certain things or I didn't put myself forward for certain things because I had the belief I'm not technical, I'm not logical, I'm not scientific. I really wanted to do a degree in psychology, but because I was told it was very sciencey and mathsy and like statistics, I assumed I couldn't do it. And I did a degree in anthropology instead, which was amazing and I loved it. But I did want to do a degree in psychology. And I didn't choose to do it when I was 18 because of that box and that messaging that I had been put in. And it really does limit you, but it's nonsense. It's just social conditioning at the end. I mean, for some people it might be true, but for me it wasn't. But also for somebody else, it might be an entirely different thing might be true. They might be being told they're very technical, very logical. And they might have this entire creative side of them that they haven't explored because they were told they're not that. And that's sad to me. You know?
I know, because it's very black or white, the whole education system. I mean, I don't know if it's changed now, but it was just so black and white. You had to belong to a side and you couldn't be anything else.
It's going to be interesting to see how the schooling system does adapt because, you know, I have lots of nieces and nephews and I think about the fact that everything that they're currently being trained for, that world is not going to exist by the time a lot of them graduate. You know, the kind of jobs that are going to be available, the type of work and the type of way that work even functions is going to be so wildly different that I'm actually curious to see how the schooling system does adapt and teaches people to be more resilient and adaptive and not put themselves in boxes because the boxes are crumbling. You know, that's what we're witnessing.
Because a lot of people worry. They listen or read the news or whatever's happening on social media and there's this overwhelm of information. What would you tell people who get overwhelmed or frozen by that kind of negativity that's around them?
I think it depends on the subject, but I would say it's kind of comes back to a similar version to what I said earlier on about having one foot grounded in reality. We don't want to be so delusional that we actually completely blinker ourselves from what's going on. So for example, some people I know really are not engaging with AI in any capacity and they're not thinking about it. They're not worrying about it at all because they're not really engaging with it. And it's a little bit delusional to think that they're not ever going to have to. So that's when we kind of gone too far down that avenue. And so I would say it's one foot in both camps. It's one foot in having some awareness of what's going on and really giving that the capacity and time that it needs, but not so much that you fall only on that camp and you're completely lost in that. But then having one foot in trust and belief, you know, everything will be okay because it will. We're very adaptable human beings. And I think it's just having one foot in, I can figure this out. I'll be okay. Life always does seem to just work out, and just having a bit of faith and trust and making sure that you're supporting yourself with not getting too bogged down in what the negative messaging is. I'm very much like I kind of dip into the news. I dip in enough that I know what's going on, but I really don't consume it too much because it is so unnatural for human beings to be exposed to this much negativity. It's insane that we should have the capacity to, you know, turn on the news and be exposed to 75 different natural disasters and wars and stuff like that. I mean, it's awful, but it's not right that one human being's nervous system capacity is not designed to take on that much. We were only ever designed to really experience and feel into what was going on in our immediate circles. And so I also think it's recognizing that the world right now is way out of whack to what we have the actual capacity for. And so it's about also supporting yourself and, you know, stretching your capacity, like exposing yourself to it enough, but also not crashing and burning around with it ultimately. So again, it's that one foot in, one foot out energy. That works for me. So I know that other people feel very differently about that, but I personally feel one foot in, one foot out. It helps me stay safe.
I like that, but there's also one foot in is kind of like unavoidable anyway, because it's kind of impossible to not get access to any information, whether it's social media or somebody telling you, you always find out. Might as well accept it. Talking about people, I wanted to mention the importance of the people we surround ourselves with. As you started at the beginning of the episode, with safety, belief, visualizing positive things, that's easier if you surround yourself with people who already practice that way of living.
It is really difficult. It's possible, but it's really difficult to grow in certain ways when everybody else is like refusing to do so, or not refusing to do so. That's probably ill-worded, but are just not on the same path. Everybody I know growing up has, a job in a company, and they all have done the similar thing. They've all got, a job, they've worked themselves up, they've got married, they've had kids. And so my lifestyle looks so insanely different to everybody else's. And the only way that I was able to really do that and grow in the way that I have is by finding people who are doing the things that I wanted to do. Again, the delusional thing is also, it's not about making stuff up, but you have to kind of know it's a little bit possible. So finding evidence of, okay, maybe I could start a business during the pandemic and become a coach full time. Like, I only know that's possible, even though that was a delusional thing at the time, because I had before I had any training, before I had any experience running a business. I've been running a music business for years, but it's a bit different. But that was insanely delusional for me to even think that. But I could only think that because I was exposed to it. And I then started spending more time with people in that space. And I thought, it's possible. There's evidence. I'm gathering evidence all this time. And, being around people who are really growth-minded and want to talk about personal development and spirituality and stuff like that, the more I surround myself with those people, it's like I get exposed to, I'd never heard of this book. I never heard of this book. And so really being mindful about who you're spending your time with. And it's not that I don't spend time with the other people in my life, the people who do have the 9-to-5 jobs, the families, the kids, but it's not who I only spend time with. And I think that's really important. And with the negativity thing in particular, over the years, I have slowly removed myself, or distanced myself is probably a better accurate way of saying it, from certain friends that I grew up with, because they're more prone to negative thinking and speaking about themselves, about life, about other people. And I found it very draining to be around. And so I've intentionally distanced myself from certain people because it really wasn't a healthy environment. And so I think you can just be mindful of who you're spending too much time with, because it does impact your own thinking and your own feeling. And unfortunately, a lot of friendships are built on what you hate. Like, I hate that too. And like, I hate her. And like, if you think about growing up, like, I mean, I don't know about what it was like for you. I'm assuming it was similar, but a lot of the time when you're growing up as a woman, you would bond over things you hated about yourselves. Like, oh my God, I hate my thighs. I hate my this. That even in itself is interesting, because you're then programmed and conditioned to be uncomfortable with saying the things that you hate about yourself. And it's like, that's not great.
How do you see via relationships that are so beneficial in that kind of way anymore? Because that's really difficult, especially if you've been friends with someone for a really long time.
I think it was easier for me. I mean, I think it would be different at a different age. It was easier for me because it was a natural, we were spending less time together anyway, because they had got married and had kids quite a lot earlier than most people I knew anyway, but they then naturally just stopped being available. The distance would have happened naturally anyway, just because of all the different life choices. And the more I put myself into the things that I wanted to do. So I actually spent a number of years before the pandemic touring. So I was hardly ever around. So I was touring a lot as a musician. I was traveling a lot. I was kind of just really throwing myself into my world. And what that meant is I just naturally would see them less anyway. So I think that in my particular situation, it was a little easier to do because it was kind of happening anyway, just because of our life choices. But if you're like 24 and your entire circle and your entire world are like, let's say 3 or 4 friends, that's a little bit more difficult. But then you have to start thinking about, okay, well, what do I want my life to look like? And you don't have to cut them out, but you can start to add on. So you don't have to always take away, but you can add to kind of counteract that. So if you're currently spending a lot of time with, let's say 3 or 4 friends, and like 2 of them are like really negative and quite draining and quite judgmental, or whatever that energy is, and you'd find it difficult to cut that or limit that because you may not want to, because they're not just single-minded, they're multifaceted humans. Add to your circle. Go and find some other friends who are interested in the things that you are, who maybe are into personal development, who are into that, and add. It's like nutritionists who always say you don't have to cut everything out, just start adding more vegetables in. It's like that. It's exactly like that. You don't have to go cold turkey and cut out sugar immediately unless you have to, whatever reason, but just add more vegetables in. And that counteracts it a little bit.
This is what I do. I have like 6 biscuits or 10 or 20, but I'm going to have a smoothie as well.
It's balance. It's all about balance. It's like you dip fruit into chocolate. It's fine. It's balanced.